what is going on with immigration, the crackdown, the border wall, and all things related to that. I want to bring on immigration attorney, adjunct professor of law at SMU, Eric Cedillo. Eric, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So the president laid out his plan. He's trying to do a little bartering, kind of offering up DACA for money for the wall. What's in this plan? What do you like? What do you dislike? Or what problems do you see?
Well, what I do potential for something actually happening with respect to Congress. Both sides are in a position now where dreamers are kind of the carrot and the stick. You know, you get a situation where many Americans, don't want these dreamers deported. They've been a big part of our society, kind of incorporated into what it is we do. Lots of professionals among them, nurses, teachers. So it's a situation where I think both sides are going to need to really come to the table and hammer something out. I think the president, the White House, kind of started off in a really relatively hard tick, as the Democrats would take it. And, you're going to get that Democratic response. But hopefully, in the end, they'll actually come to some sort of consensus and hammer something out.
Eric, do you think Congress has a stomach to take on this issue?
It's tough. It's a hard point at this point in time to kind of come together on something like this. But adding the addition of supporting the dreamers might actually lead to something. We've been looking at years for comprehensive immigration reform. It's come close lots of times. This might be the a situation wherein something actually happens. So, if you look at it from that perspective, I think the possibility is there that something could actually happen.
Now, recently the president said if Congress doesn't act, then he's going to do it himself. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, the president says a whole lot of things in terms of what's happening. And we hear different things from, the actual the folks responding on his behalf. So it's real difficult to determine. But we are looking at a situation where 800,000 individuals are going to lose their work permit. And with that, it's going to have a devastating effect on our economies. Here in Texas, we have 100,000 dreamers. You pull them out of the economy, and that's a situation that really needs to be dealt with. So hopefully, better heads prevail, and something actually comes of it.
Talking to immigration attorney, adjunct professor of law at SMU, Eric Cedillo. Eric, if you looked into your crystal ball, give me your best guess as to how this will play out.
I think they're going to do something to protect the dreamers. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to, of course, incorporate all the things that the president wants in terms of what he's kind of set out in terms of a plan. So I think we'll see something in between. We'll probably see something where Congress does act, maybe along the lines of some sort of bridge act that provides an opportunity for the dreamers to continue to be protected to a certain extent, perhaps the addition of work authorization. But we'll see. These other demands, I think it's going to be hard fought and back and forth. And I think we'll get a little bit more clarity from the White House over the next few weeks and months and see if this is actually something that is going to be practical and actually workable.
Do you think, when you take a look at the president's plan as an immigration attorney, do you have an issue with the wall in certain places? Do you have an issue with securing the borders?
Absolutely not.
Why do you think people do? I mean, for somebody who is totally against it, and now I think that some people are even calling this, the big term now is everything's racist. That it's racist if you want to build a wall. What is your response to that?
Well, in terms of the symbolism, it's one thing if people look at it from that perspective. For me, the practicality of building a wall, it just doesn't really make sense. Mm-hmm. I think virtual walls, situations where we're protecting our borders, utilization of drones, additional agents, things that's we've got to secure our borders along those lines. But to put up an actual wall, just the cost and what it effectively does, we see that it isn't really as workable as people would think. It provides a modicum of comfort to think that a wall is going to keep people out. But in all honesty, those things are situations where they've been compromised in the past. It's a situation where I think the president gets his way if we can make sure that we have additional monies towards, virtual funding of what is considered a wall, certainly protections along our border, which I don't think anybody has a problem totally with. But, it's a situation that hopefully there is a compromise and then we discontinue, the hard rhetoric, either for and against, and make sure that we're doing what's right.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I agree with you. This is going to be a wall Some of it's going to be brick and mortar. Other parts of it's going to be virtual. Other parts of it's going to be, surveillance. This isn't a wall like the Great Wall of China. I mean, there's going to be different types of walls, as we just talked about. Some that you can see with your eye, and others, like you said, whether it's drones or human beings or what have you. But when you sit here and you look at this debate, both sides are going to have to give a little bit. That's the only way this is going to work, right?
That's absolutely true. It's a situation where I think the White House has come out with a very staunch, hardline approach. We see the Democrats responding to it, but hopefully, again, over the next few weeks, we'll get a better sense of what he would actually, because he hasn't said, look, I'm going to veto anything that does not include this. He hasn't said that yet, and as he takes a softer approach to that, we'll get a better determination on whether or not this thing's workable.
Do you think it's a good deal for Democrats? Say, look, we'll leave the dreamers. Just give me some funding for the wall.
Well, I think the Democrats are putting themselves in a situation where, they're doing the same thing. They're saying, well, without the opportunity for a pathway to citizenship, this doesn't work. In all honesty, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case currently. We need to protect these kids in the immediacy with respect to what's happening, to protect our economy and other things. So it's a situation where the Democrats need to come together and make concession as well. Both sides just can't take this hard tack and allow this, to discontinue, because we're just going to force these kids back into the shadows, and that's just going to hurt the economy just across the board.
As an immigration attorney, and I lied, I have one more question for you. Do we need to expedite the process of becoming an American citizen, number one? And number two, well, I answer that first before I go to two. Do we need to expedite the process?
Well, I think it's a relatively decent process. You have an opportunity to get a green card, become an LPR, and then 5 years later you can be a citizen. I don't think there's anything wrong with the length of that process. It's one that is relatively workable in terms of making a determination of someone who's being properly vetted to become a citizen. So that's a situation where I think that's okay. It gives us an opportunity to see what this person's all about, make sure that they're on the up and up in terms of obeying the laws and other things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The regression in terms of pulling back the family unity provisions, that's something that the White House has said, hey, look, we need to discontinue. We need to, I think, maintain that, because families are an important part of becoming, part of the fabric of American society. So cutting back on that might be a mistake in terms of what the White House is contending.
All right, let's say hello to Eric Cedillo on our Newsmaker line. Hi, Eric.
Hey, how you doing?
I am well, thank you very much. Eric, you want to talk a little bit this morning here about the border wall? You want to talk a little bit about the crackdown on unaccompanied minors? What is the story on this?
Yeah, it looks like the president's kind of forcing the hand of Congress. We'll see how it plays out. It looks like he's taking a hard-line approach to getting them to do something with respect to taking care of these dreamers, and then maybe acting a little bit more on comprehensive reform. We'll see what happens. It looks like both sides are going to take that hardline stance to begin with, and hopefully this plays itself out in a little over the next few months in terms of actually working something out.
So is it clear that the Democrats want some kind of a program to protect the dreamers or the DACA, because that thing is ending? So this is a strategy, and they want some way to keep these 800,000 kids here.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think both sides. I think across the country, most people are understanding of the predicament the dreamers are in. I don't think anybody wants them necessarily deported. You got about 800,000 of them, a lot of them really viable in our economy, a lot of them nurses, teachers, just a whole lot of folks that are here working. So it's a situation where I think both sides, the president's utilizing it as a, kind of both a carrot and a stick to kind of make something happen. And the Democrats need to respond to it, because we're on a really tight deadline. We're going to lose a lot of work authorizations over the next few months. And, it's going to affect our economy. It's something we really need to take into consideration.
So if you have someone that is a dreamer and they went to college and they're now working as a nurse, they're not necessarily going to be deported, or you're saying that their work permit would end. Would the employer know that? How do you think this would play out?
Yeah, it's exactly what will happen. You've got a situation where once their work authorization ends, the employer will ask for, a re-up. Let's see the reauthorization to work. If they don't have that, which they won't, then it'll be a situation where the employer will have to let them go. So you're going to drive a lot of these folks back into the shadows. I think that's going to be the biggest, closest consideration that we have. The actual deportation, they probably won't be a high priority for deportation, so we won't see a lot of that happening. But, the greater problem, again, is going to be that it's going to really take its toll on our economy in terms of loss of jobs.
Got it. So this work permit, for lack of a better word, reauthorization, it's pretty transparent. I mean, employers know about this. These people are out in the open.
Yeah, it's a situation where they're given, they don't necessarily have to know that they're actually partaking of the DACA program. It's actually, it's not something that they ask. But it's an authorization, and most employers will have an end date to that authorization. They will ask for, their re-up, and when they don't get it, then they'll be obligated in most instances to let them go.
Yeah. What is
the situation?
Yeah. What is the deadline, Eric? You said we're on a pretty tight schedule here.
Yeah, at different times. We had a deadline to re-up on the 2-year work authorization for those individuals whose work permits were going to end by March 5th. They've got this 2-year work authorization. So lots of individuals who've gone the 2 years or any time after, if it ends after March 5th, let's say March 6th, for example, then on March 6th, that work authorization ends, and they no longer have the ability to work legally in the country. So, I've got a situation where you've got a lot of folks on the line. About 150,000 of them re-upped over the last month. They had until, September 5th or October 5th to re-up on their 2-year work permit. So it's a situation where, where it's coming to a head very quickly.
Got it. Eric, just philosophically, isn't it amazing that we have to go back here and we have to play both sides? Kind of, to get something that is good. For example, like you just pointed out, these kids, many of them are productive, and most of us can agree that you need some kind of a border fence. But in order to get both of those things done, each side has to play the other off the other.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, and that's what I'm hoping is happening. The White House came up with a real staunch approach where we want this, and this, or otherwise the possibility of a veto may occur. Hopefully that'll soften up over a period of time. The Democrats responded with, that isn't going to work. You're not giving us an opportunity to even work these things out. But as we know, the possibility may exist where they may actually be talking on more reasonable terms. I think I don't think as far-reaching as total immigration reform is going to happen, but I think they will deal with the dreamers because, it's too big a thing for it to go by the wayside.
Yeah, exactly. All right. He is an immigration attorney. He's an adjunct professor at SMU, and his name is Eric Cedillo. Eric, thanks for giving us a few minutes.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, happy to welcome back immigration attorney, adjunct professor of law, SMU, Southern Methodist University, Eric Cedillo. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great to have you back. You're a learned professor, immigration attorney, and I don't get why this is so hard. I just don't. Sorry. I don't understand it, Eric. You know what? All you have to do is secure my border. It's like a leak in a boat. You wouldn't necessarily bail water if you didn't fix the problem. So fix the border, and then the dreamers get whatever they want because I'm not deporting them. So fix that. That's easy because you're not going to deport somebody who came here as a 5-year-old.
Some kind of amnesty program.
And that's just whatever Ronald Reagan. Go back to that blueprint and let's just fix this. And it just can't be that hard. But everybody's just, you're a racist, bigot, homophobe. That's a name calling. Eric, fix this for me.
Yeah, I think more than anything else, they're hard-pressed to adhere to the symbolism behind the wall. There's no doubt, I don't think if you ask anybody who thinks about it right-mindedly, that we have an obligation to protect our borders. And, a wall, whether that be brick and mortar or it be some virtual wall in terms of drones and or border agents along, we need to protect the border. So the Democrats can get hard-pressed and hide behind, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But we do need to definitely take care of these dreamers. We're looking at a really ticking time bomb in terms of their loss of the ability to work, in terms of work permits. We got a lot of these kids, really exceptional individuals who are nurses and teachers and others. Here in the state of Texas, we have about 100,000 of them that are going to lose their employment over the next couple of years. That's going to be about a $6 billion hit to our economy. So it's a situation where we really need to get together. We need to stop the rhetoric and actually get something worked out.
All right, so what if we said, let's secure the border, take the word wall out of it, build a little wall, and then other security, just whatever semantics you want to use. But why would you object to saying, gosh, we don't want a sieve on the south border, even though I know there are some people that just want open borders?
Yeah. Well, quite honestly, if you got down to it, I don't know how many people are out there that say we want open borders. I really don't. Now, of course, there are going to be some people who would say that, but the reality is we need to be careful. We need to protect our borders, and most people would understand that. So it is a situation, I think, if there's going to be any type of compromise, that's what we're going to see. It's going to be less of a symbolic, huge brick-and-mortar wall. It's going to be a situation where we devote funds to protecting our borders, the increase in the numbers of agents, and perhaps, again, drones or a virtual wall in some way. If this is going to be worked out, that's where, it's going to be hammered out in terms of those concessions that are made. Both sides are going to claim victory, and hopefully we do something to protect these streamers.
Well, what do you think, Eric? Can we do this thing? I mean, will we do this thing? Because I'm really having doubts about how this Congress is working, and just this Nancy Pelosi getting shouted down by her own side. That was embarrassing. But yet you've got some real leftists out there that maybe they're the 0.5% that are so radical they want those open borders. But we have got to take care of all of these kids that came to this country. It does not make any sense to go find them. Come on, man. We messed this up for 50 years. Let's fix this together.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see some sort of protection like the Bridge Act, which protects these dreamers, perhaps a piecemeal situation. I know the President of the White House is maintaining that they need comprehensive reform with respect to the bill, or they don't sign it. I think that's probably going to change over time. I don't think we're going to get anything close to reform in this session. But at the very least, we'll have something that protects the dreamers, and probably some additional funding for border security, things of that nature. But nothing as comprehensive as some folks probably want.
I don't know what leads to something comprehensive. Do you?
If there was anything close, kind of holding out the dreamers as a carrot and a stick, this might be the time to make something happen, because it really is. It's something that we have an end game, we have a time frame that we have to deal with, and it's a situation where if they can't make this work, then we're going to have some real issues with respect to our economy and a whole lot of other things. So, if this doesn't happen, then in terms of reform, I don't know what is ever really truly going to happen. We'll probably continue doing this for the next 20 years like we've done for the last 20. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but at least there's that possibility, that hope that kind of is out there. I think the majority of Americans believe that these dreamers should be protected, so perhaps that will come to aid in the concessions that need to be made.
I love going to New York City. I just love it. I go to a street corner and I'll see 17 nationalities at the same corner. Nowhere else in the world does this work. You can't go to Italy and become Italian. You can't go to France and be French. You can come here and be an American. That's what it's about. But we just have to have structure. That's right. Just structure and laws.
And get rid of all the rhetoric, that both sides just kind of adhere to. On both sides, quite honestly.
Both sides, no question. No, it's out there, and I think they're all a bunch of suits. I'm so disenfranchised. I just said, why don't you go work for 6 years, come back and get your pharmacy job back? How about that?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. I got to be there 40 years because I got it going on. That's why. I'm sorry. Eric, you the man. You're very learned. We appreciate you. SMU is lucky to have you.
Thanks for having me on.
Eric Cedillo is an attorney, immigration attorney, an adjunct professor of law at SMU.
President Trump had pledged to help protect young people known as dreamers who were brought to the United States illegally when they were children by their parent. He is calling, though, for money to fund a border wall to be part of any immigration deal.
Immigration attorney Eric Cedillo is also an adjunct professor of law at SMU. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
So tell us about this whole thing. The president says, all right, I want to protect these dreamers, but he also wants the border wall. What else is he asking for?
Well, there's actually a few things that have come out of the White House. He wants to change the law with respect to the undocumented or unaccompanied minors that are coming in. He wants to reform legal immigration in terms of sponsorships. He wants additional judges, which I don't think is that bad an idea, border agents, and, of course, the funding of the wall. Some other things that a real hardline approach to, that have a lot of people on the left and the Democrats looking at saying, this is a non-starter. So it's a situation where hopefully they'll be able to come together and work something out, because, having something that allows the dreamers to continue to live in this country and work is very important. It's very important to the economy. It's very important to who we are and what we need to have done. So a situation where these two need to kind of come together. It's very polarizing, but this needs to be worked out.
Now, Eric, when you look at the list of demands, I mean, does this seem like a negotiating tactic? In other words, is there room to move on both sides to fix what everybody seems to agree is a broken system?
I certainly hope so. I think with respect to the wall, if we're not necessarily talking about a brick and mortar wall along all 2,000 miles of our Texas border, if we're talking about a virtual wall, if we're talking about monies that would take care of what's happening, I don't think anybody in their right mind really wants to have open borders necessarily. So it's a situation where how you define what that wall means, there might be some concessions made on both sides that allows us to go forward. But the symbolism behind what Trump has said in terms of what the wall represents has become, of course, polarizing. And it's a situation where I think when it comes down to it, when they put it on paper, there may be some ability for concessions and have something done that works this all out.
But why do there have to be add-ons? Why? And this is Washington, though, all the time. Why does it have to be, all right, if you want this done, then we got to do this?
Yeah. Well, I think what we're going to see is it's not going to happen. Total immigration reform probably isn't going to happen, and that's what the president is pushing. And it really is to placate his base in terms of being a hardliner against immigration, things of that nature. And I think what's going to happen is ultimately they're going to take care of the dreamers, I would hope, and we're not going to see a lot of the other stuff that's happening. They may push that along the lines. We may see additional funding. We may get some additional judges, perhaps Border Patrol agents. Both sides will claim a victory, and hopefully we do take care of the dreamers, because we're in a really tight time crunch here. A lot of these folks are going to start losing their ability to work in this country, and when that happens, we're looking at the degradation of a lot of economies. Here in Texas, we're looking at approximately a $6 billion hit if we lose 100,000 of our employees, lots of them professionals, lots of them nurses and teachers and others that have partaken of the DREAM DACA program. So it's something we need to look at and fix really quickly.
All right, Eric Cedillo, immigration attorney and adjunct professor of law at SMU, with us here on the Kogo News Live Line.